Joe Musso alongside Emery Hunt here to get us started. Emery, quite the ball game if you're into offense, and we know we are. Many ways to hack this up if you're sitting there as a Dallas fan right now. How are you supposed to feel? Because you have, on one hand, an offense that cannot be stopped. On the other, a defense that was exposed in some spots tonight.
You're cautiously optimistic because you like that your offense can go out there and score against anyone in the NFL. You're going to give yourself a chance to win with your offense being able to play like that. And Dak Prescott really tightening, his race on the MVP. He strengthened his case, put it that way. But you like that your offense can score. You're concerned about your run game, but you like that your defense, when it counted the most, got two key stops, both on fourth down. The stop against Charbonnet on fourth and short, and then the stop to end the game, albeit he was unblocked getting out to Geno Smith. But you do like the fact that your defense can close out a game with this pass rush. You have a guy that can take the ball away in DeRon Bland. You have an offense that has a great quarterback in Dak Prescott and receivers that can get vertical down the field.
Yeah, and even the run game did get up to 136 yards total on this night. Just a run game without any sort of momentum or plays working into one another. Play calling, penalties, also a storyline in this one, as were the zero punts. Again, just the fifth game in NFL history where that's the case. Talk to me about what Seattle did so well to nullify that pass rush of Dallas. I mean, we came into this one talking about a decided advantage in the trenches by Seattle, and that's what made this a close game.
I think that was the biggest key, or maybe the MVP of the Seahawks side, was the fact that their offensive line actually held up pretty well against Dallas. Dallas had to work hard to get pressure on Geno Smith, and when you saw that happening where the offensive line came to play, it allowed that Seahawks passing game to really take flight and lead from the front. We saw Geno Smith working vertical down the field with all of his receiving options. DK Metcalf had a nice bean that he caught for a touchdown to open the game. Then you saw Jackson Smith and Jigba have success against DeRon Bland. Everyone had success tonight against DeRon Bland. You saw Noah Fant get involved. You saw them try to work different parts of their passing game, get the running backs involved in the passing game. So I thought because the offensive line really showed up, it allowed that offensive weaponry of Seattle to showcase itself. Now on the other side, you worry about their defense, and that was the biggest Achilles heel in tonight's game.
Almost poetic, a free runner by number 11 on the last snap of the game. Micah Parsons working through double teams all night long, and no one decides to block him there on that fourth down. I know you already tipped your hat towards Dak, but I think we need to go a little deeper there because in this 8-game span, he has 20 passing touchdowns. That's the most in any 8-game span in Dallas Cowboys franchise history. I mean, what we're watching right now not only is impressive from a statistical standpoint, but did you feel different watching him orchestrate that drive late in the game? Is there a trust in Dak Prescott that there hasn't been before?
You know, that's a great question leading into it because we saw Dak throwing the football a lot in this ballgame. They needed him to throw the football a lot. Not once did I worry about the interception is coming. I didn't even think in terms of he's going to make the turnover. I thought he was going to make the play, and he ended up making the play. Even on the pass to CeeDee Lamb in the end zone where it was a tight covered CeeDee Lamb, looked like double coverage, the ball actually passed through his hands and out of bounds. So even in a tough, tight window throw, it was still an accurately placed pass that was on target that CeeDee Lamb should have caught. So for me, watching this game, watching Dak Prescott, just like, wow, this guy is really playing in the zone. Like we talked about in pregame, Joe, it feels like this is his offense, and he's orchestrating it perfectly on the field.
Well, let's also welcome in CBS Sports NFL writer Tyler Sullivan with his thoughts on this one. I don't know, 70-something points, no punts. Can I interest you in that, Tyler Sullivan? What was your emerging thought from this game?
Yeah, I still have a lot of questions about both of these teams. Obviously, for Seattle, you're having a lot of questions when you look at the schedule down the line. You have to play Philadelphia and San Francisco on top of just playing Dallas. Their playoff hopes are dwindling. But for Dallas, you know, this is a good win. They beat a team that's above 500, but ultimately, you kind of don't really feel great about the key things when we talk about winning in the postseason. I thought Mike McCarthy had a couple of very questionable coaching decisions in that game, particularly even towards down the stretch here. You're up by a field goal, you kick it with to get 6 points. You can't kind of have a Dak Prescott fade to the back corner of the end zone on that third down play. Ultimately, I have a lot of questions about this team ascending to that next tier in the NFC, about these teams that we're going to see on Sunday in the San Francisco 49ers and the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't know if they're quite there yet, even though their record would say that they are.
Beautiful, that we're going to see this all play out in front of us, that we have these matchups at this point of the season. So we will get answers to those questions, but fair questions at that after some of that decision-making in game. the talent sort of rose above the decision-making in this one. CeeDee Lamb, I mean, spectacular all season long, and here, again in prime time, a standalone window, shows you why he's one of the best in the game. We were talking throughout the game, Emery, just how multiple he is and what he can do to a defense, pre-snap. What does that change when we're talking about a guy who can stretch it vertically, who can take it into the middle of the field, and who can be lined up just about anywhere on the field?
It makes you such a difficult team to match up against, because when you think about how often they align him in the slot or on the outside, it really goes into a game plan like, hey, he's a game day matchup piece. This week, we're going to need you to play slot receiver. Next week, we may need you to play Z. The other week, we're going to need you to play our X. One week, we may need you to be in the backfield and carry the ball. So I think
big
CeeDee
run
Lamb,
late in this one. They were trying to salt some clock. Yep,
right, and so when you think about CeeDee Lamb and what he does really well is he operates well with the ball in his hands. And when you have someone that's that versatile, we used to see that growing up, where you see guys like a Eric Metcalf be able to play all over the field. And when you see those type of players, you want to get those type of players of football, because you know on the other side, there's not one defender that can really lock him up, so you kind of have to designate two, which means everyone else can eat, because they're spending two guys on one of your players, your game breaker. And you know he's also going to show up in the biggest of moments, like he did on those third down in shorts, where he's working the flats, working this short intermediate zone, settling down. So he was doing great things above the X's and O's, got him the football, and keeps this 100-yard game streak of his alive.
Yeah, I think it's a phenomenal point. I mean, you got to mention, too, he's doing some impact on the ground as well. That 24-yard gain down the stretch to help them kill clock. And ultimately, like you're saying, Emery, he is the ultimate chess piece in this offense. And as much as we could talk about him piling up catches and piling up yardages and finding little pockets in the end zone, he's opening up things for everybody else in that offense. And I don't think Jake Ferguson eats, I don't think Brandon Cooks eats, I don't think Michael Gallup eats as much as they do without all the attention that CeeDee Lamb garners to an opposing secondary. So for me, that's the big story for him. Ultimately, he's going to put up his numbers. He is that security blanket for Dak Prescott. But if we're talking about how they can win going forward with CeeDee Lamb as the centerpiece of their offense, I think it's all of those other things that he does, whether it's on the ground or opening up things for others, that really is what makes this Dallas offense hum.
The Seattle Seahawks making some history here, and there's little time for optimism in a loss at this point in the season, but their top wide receiver woke up as well, and Seattle becomes the first team in NFL history to score 35-plus points, punt it 0 times, and lose. It's just an oddity. It's an odd confluence of events, but it needs to add up to wins, and it needs to add up to wins soon. As we take a look here at the NFC playoff picture, with this win, the Cowboys sort of turn one eye to what might be the 1 seed, depending on what happens between the 49ers and the Eagles this coming weekend. The Cowboys could be just a game off that divisional lead of the Birds. Seattle, meantime, still sitting in that 7th slot, but now 6-6 with the Packers, Rams, and Saints. Just a game off that pace, Emery. I mean, I see your eyes lighting up right now. What are you looking at?
If the Rams are able to knock off the Browns, they own the head-to-head right now against Seattle, as they beat them in Week 1. Seattle will be out the playoff picture by the end of business on Sunday if the Rams are able to pull off the upset.
And then you continue that conversation across that terrible ask of them in their schedule in these coming weeks. And it's going to be a percentage that shrinks from that nearly 50% chance to make the playoffs that we saw prior to this game. Tyler, as you assess that playoff picture and look at some of those numbers, it felt like Seattle took a step forward, or they maybe got up off the mat tonight because they were sleeping those last 2 games that we saw out of them. At this point of the season, to have that variance in effort almost tells you what about a team? I mean, are you scratching them off, or are you circling them at this point to be a part of that playoff picture?
I think you kind of scratch them off a little bit. I don't know if you use the eraser all the way, but I think you're like, you know what? I don't know if they're going to make it there. I think the Rams are a very interesting team that's outside that could, like you were saying, Emery, kind of push themselves into that picture. But for Seattle, I think it's a little too late. I thought that Geno Smith played well in this game. I thought he got the ball out quick. I thought the offensive line really helped him negate the pressure that he was being put against. It was about 55% of the time he was pressured on his dropbacks, but he wasn't sacked at all in that game. And so for me, that's encouraging, but it almost feels like he should have been doing that a few weeks ago. and getting the ball out quick, putting it into the hands of Jackson Smith and Jigba, to DK Metcalf, to Tyler Lockett. Now you're trying to do that while also climbing up the ladder in this playoff picture, and you might be doing it with a depleted backfield, because Zach Charbonnet left this game. They already were without Kenneth Walker. If all of a sudden you're now asking to put it completely on Geno Smith and have guys like DJ Dallas in their backfield to really make that running game go, it's just another thing that's going to put them behind the 8 ball in their playoff hopes.
First game this season where we sat down on primetime. And, you know, those primetime unders, they've been cashing at a ridiculous rate. So maybe this regression to the mean was coming. 75-plus points, no punts, first time ever in NFL history. The game is changing, gentlemen, and we're glad we could be here to take it all in. Emery, Tyler, thank you as always. Plenty more coming this weekend as we are just underway in Week 13. When they stop, we start. Highlights, reaction, everything you need on Game Day Scoreboard each and every Sunday. That's beginning at 4 Eastern. Your highlights, your booth recaps. Our guys taking you into all the latest across the league, including a couple stops with some of the biggest names in the NFL on CBS. Emery and I breaking it all down this weekend. Won't you join us?